Aviation is arguably the safest mode of transportation. According to the Northwestern University in the United States, deaths related to air travel come in at 0.07 per 1 billion passenger miles, safer than sea travel, rail, and road. Air accidents are incredibly rare, and when they do occur, more people walk away from a plane crash than the media would lead you on to believe. If you were to be involved in such an already extremely unlikely event, you statistically have up to a 95% chance of survival. There have, however, been numerous deadly incidents with varying degrees of devastation. As of June 2021, the deadliest aviation disaster to ever occurred on the island of Tenerife in 1977. Two Boeing 747s collided on the runway, resulting in the deaths of 583 people. If you would like to learn more about this accident, we already have a video detailing this on the channel. If this death toll were to ever be surpassed, it would almost certainly come from a type of air disaster which, ever since the dawn of modern aviation, those in the industry have tried relentlessly to prevent: the mid-air collision. Though the accident in Tenerife occurred on the runway, collisions at high altitude have also occurred. In this video, we will discuss what was literally a narrowly avoided disaster, an event which almost resulted in not only a deadly mid-air collision, but was mere meters away from becoming the deadliest aviation disaster to ever occur. The day was January 31st, 2001. Japan Airlines Flight 958, a McDonnell Douglas DC10, had departed the South Korean city of Busan in the afternoon. This particular variant of the iconic DC-10 was the last iteration of the plane, the DC-1040. This version came equipped with newer, more powerful engines. Japan Airlines operated 20 of these planes and was just one of two airlines that initially ordered the plane, the other customer being Northwest Airlines in the United States. The increased performance of this plane meant it was ideal for longer-range operations. However, as was common in Japan, large wide-body airliners were used for short-haul flights, given the popularity of flying in this region of the world. There were 250 passengers and crew on this flight. On the flight deck of the DC-10 were 3 flight crew members. It should now be noted that for this incident, some names of the flight crews are either not public knowledge, incredibly difficult to find, or hidden behind a language barrier. Commander of the flight on the DC-10 was 45-year-old Akazawa Tetsuyuki. On this flight, he was sitting in the right-hand seat, overseeing his trainee captain in the left seat. The 2 pilots were also accompanied by a flight engineer, as was standard in the DC-10. Flight 958 cruised on autopilot at 37,000 feet on their flight to Tokyo's Narita Airport. Narita Airport is not the only airport serving the massive Tokyo metropolis. Located closer to Tokyo itself is Haneda Airport, one of the busiest in the world. There, a Boeing 747 was preparing for departure, another Japan Airlines flight. Flight 907 would be flying to Naha on Okinawa, a domestic flight. Again, a wide-body jetliner used on a short-range flight. In fact, this 747 variant is a sub-variant of the modern 747-400 model of the type, the 747-400D. This sub-variant was specially designed for short-range operations with a high-density seating arrangement. Up to 660 passengers could be seated on this plane with a high-density all-economy class seating arrangement. Interestingly, this plane did not come fitted with winglets, as was standard on most other models of the 747-400. Flight 907 was to take 411 passengers to Naha, with a further 16 crew members for a total of 427 on board. Having made a routine takeoff from Tokyo's Haneda Airport at 3:36 p.m., Flight 907 began making its way to Naha with an assigned cruise altitude of 39,000 feet. On this flight, there were a total of 4 people on the flight deck. 40-year-old Captain Watanabe Makoto was seated in the left seat, while a training first officer was in the right-hand seat. Another training first officer was also seated behind them on a jump seat, while the acting first officer was seated behind the captain. Flight 907's flight plan to Naha looked like this. When compared with the flight plan of Japan Airlines Flight 958, we can see the obvious point where the two planes would cross over. To avoid confusion between the two Japan Airlines flight numbers, as both aircraft were departing and arriving in Tokyo respectively, albeit to and from different Tokyo airports, in this video, we will refer to Japan Airlines Flight 907, the Boeing 747, as the outbound flight, and Japan Airlines Flight 958, the DC-10, as the inbound flight. There was a 2,000 feet difference between the two aircraft's two assigned cruise altitudes, although differences in altitude will be discussed later. Aircraft that day out of both Tokyo airports were making northerly departures and arrivals. Because of this, the inbound flight needed to pass south of Haneda Airport to make a landing onto one of two north-facing runways at Narita Airport from the south. The outbound flight took off heading north and then turned, and the two planes would cross paths over Suruga Bay, over 100 kilometers southwest of Tokyo. On the ground, this sector of airspace was officially designated as Kanto South Sea Sector. It was being managed by air traffic controller Hachitani Hideki, a 26-year-old trainee controller. He was under the supervision of 31-year-old controller supervisor Momi Yasuko. There is conflicting information on the level of workload that trainee Hachitani was experiencing in the time leading up to the near-miss incident. Sources, although conflicting, say between 10 and 14 planes were in the area during this time. At 3:41 p.m., the outbound flight reported to Hachitani that they were passing through 11,000 feet, with a final assigned cruise altitude of 39,000 feet, or flight level 390. 1 minute later, the controller issued the outbound flight with an instruction to fly direct to a non-directional beacon in the town of Yezu, to which the flight crew complied. Even though the outbound flight's final cruise altitude was 39,000 feet, they were shortly instructed to hold climbing at 35,000 feet until further notice, but they were cleared to climb up to flight level 390 at 3:46. Meanwhile, the inbound flight had been handed off from the neighboring sector to the west. At 3:48, the DC-10 contacted Hachitani in his sector, stating their flight level of 370 or 37,000 feet. Controller Hachitani acknowledged their presence, but was preoccupied with other aircraft at this time, namely the accident outbound flight and an American Airlines flight which was also in the area, which had also been unresponsive with the controller up till this point. Once the American flight had contacted the controller, they disclosed their altitude of flight level 390, 39,000 feet. Hachitani immediately instructs them to descend to 35,000 feet to avoid another potential conflict with another aircraft. Minutes passed, and at 3:53 p.m., Flight 907, the outbound flight, made a left turn on course for their next waypoint. The turn would take them south. As the two aircraft approached the crossover point, a piece of equipment fitted on both aircraft alerted the pilots of potential conflict. It's called TCAS, or Traffic Collision Avoidance System. Although we discussed this piece of technology in a previous video, we will quickly refresh on what this now standard piece of aviation equipment does. Developed in the 1980s, it was the answer to a long sought after question on how to prevent mid-air collisions. It was developed to be a way independent from the ground where planes can automatically alert their flight crews should another aircraft be flying too close. It is in place as an additional measure as modern air traffic control is conducted in a way that evasive actions from pilots is unimaginably unlikely. TCAS interacts with a plane's transponder, a piece of radio equipment that has been on aircraft for decades, even before the advent of TCAS. Planes emit a signal, and should this signal be interrupted by another plane's signal, it automatically alerts the pilots, initially with an audible alert of nearby traffic. Traffic. And should the two aircraft get even closer, the TCAS will then issue a corrective instruction to the pilots to either ascend or descend. Ideally, the two conflicting aircraft will receive opposing instructions to minimize any chance of collision. On many aircraft, including the Douglas DC10, the TCAS system needed to be installed as it was an older plane. the vertical speed display can also double as a TCAS instrument that can display any nearby aircraft. Even though air traffic is carefully choreographed, the TCAS system can still sound as a precautionary measure. At 3:54, a traffic advisory was issued to the flight crew of the inbound flight, and the TCAS display showed an aircraft to their left which appeared to be climbing, as was indicated by an arrow icon on their display. They would be issued with an instruction from the TCAS telling them to descend, thus the autothrottle was soon disconnected on the DC-10. Hachitani Hideki on the ground also noticed the two aircraft crossing and issues an instruction to the outbound aircraft, the 747, to descend to 35,000 feet. On board this aircraft, the autopilot was disconnected as they too received a TCAS warning telling them to climb. The pilots followed the instructions from the controller. By this point, the plane had now actually exceeded 37,000 feet. The controller, ideally, could have just done nothing and the outbound aircraft would have passed over the inbound plane. However, he chose to intervene in a move that would later cost him his job. Hachitani attempted to instruct the DC-10 inbound aircraft to make a turn to the right as an evasive maneuver. However, the plane did not respond to this instruction. The flight crew of the inbound plane had also begun descending their aircraft as per the instruction given to them from their TCAS, to which it even emphasized an increased descent. All the while, the 747 outbound aircraft was also descending, having followed the instructions from the controller. Both planes were now flying down towards the exact same spot in the sky. Controller Hachitani again tries to maneuver the inbound flight with an instruction to turn right, but again the plane does not respond. Hachitani's supervisor, Momi Yasuko, stepped in as she questionably issued a transmission of Japan Air 957 start descent. This transmission was interesting for the fact that no aircraft in the area had this call sign, and also that both incident aircraft were now at this point descending. At just after 3:55 PM, she then instructed the outbound aircraft to climb again, but the pilot flying did not respond to this instruction also. With just mere seconds before the planes were to cross paths, the two planes would have been visible to each other. Captain Watanabe Makoto could clearly see the other plane, so much so that he would later correctly identify the plane as a DC-10 to air traffic control. He took a drastic evasive action in this moment and quickly lowered the nose of the plane to pass underneath the crossing DC-10. In the cabin, in the minutes leading up to the incident, passengers had been settling in for their 2.5-hour flight to Naha. Flight attendants had begun serving drinks, and some passengers had started to move about the cabin. In the moment that the captain took their evasive action, eyewitnesses on board described other passengers being flung to the ceiling of the cabin before crashing to the floor. This action injured around 100 people, with injuries ranging from minor to serious, one passenger sustaining a broken leg. There were no injuries, however, reported on the inbound flight, and the flight continued to Tokyo Narita, where it landed soon after. As for the Naha-bound flight, after continuing en route for several minutes, the pilots diverted the plane back to Tokyo's Haneda Airport to seek treatment for their injured passengers. Sources are conflicting on just how close the near miss was. Captain Watanabe Makoto would later exclaim an estimation of around 10 meters. A more accurate estimation, by the time that the 747 aircraft was underneath the DC-10, would be in the realm of at least over 100 meters. Following the incident, the actions of the air traffic controllers and Captain Watanabe Makoto came under scrutiny. Pilot errors could be attributed to the flight crew following instructions from ATC while contradicting the directions given by their onboard TCAS. Controllers Hachitani Hideki and Momi Yasuko would eventually serve prison time for their involvement. Japanese authorities approached the International Civil Aviation Organization for assistance going forward. They emphasized that TCAS warnings should take precedence over ATC instructions. There is no way to tell for sure that if the flight crew of the outbound aircraft could not see the crossing DC-10, that this would have resulted in a devastating collision. Had this have happened at night, could this incident have been much worse? As it turned out, in shockingly similar circumstances, the following year on July 1st, 2002, A mid-air collision would occur over southern Germany between a Russian airliner and a DHL cargo plane. This disaster killed 71 people, 72 if you account for the murder of an air traffic controller conducted out of an act of revenge. For more information, we already have a video on this accident. Despite TCAS and emphasis of its importance and subsequent advances in technology, mid-air collisions have still occurred. One incident of note occurred as recently as 2006, where a private chartered jet clipped the wing of a Boeing 737 over the Amazon rainforest in Brazil, killing 154 people. This event will be discussed in its own video due to the differing circumstances surrounding it. Had the Japan Airlines near-miss incident resulted in a collision, it possibly could have become the single most deadly event in aviation history, potentially killing 677 people. Hello everyone, thank you so much for making it to the end of this disaster averted video. I have been extremely thrilled with how this video turned out, and if you found it interesting, be sure to subscribe as there is a new video out every Saturday. I have some exciting new videos in the works, so be sure that you are subbed so you don't miss out on those. It's time now to thank my patrons. If you would like to get your name featured or read out at the end of the next video, you can join the Disaster Breakdown Patreon from £3 per month, and the link to that will be in the pinned comment. A thank you to my £5 tier patrons, Aidan Montgomery, Derek Bean, Hector Palmateles, Ian Tatum, Ken Zachman, Christy, Leon Sant Jennings, Marie Ennis, MG, Pacman7, Panic Chicken, Surya Melody, SoFP, and Sue Shoes. Special thanks to my generous £10 tier patrons, Alex Keller, Ann Sid, Daniel Hendricks, D. Rogers, Mike Milton, Side Effect, Robert Hamilton, Roger Mayer, and Where Are My Cheetos? That's it for me this week. Hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.